announcements. Come on in, guys. Find a chair. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Hey, a couple announcements. Next Tuesday, anybody know what next Tuesday is? It's primaries next Tuesday. So we have a number of different candidates here I'm going to introduce in just a minute. But if you don't have one of the church voter guide cards, grab one. And if you haven't voted yet, it's a great way to go on there and learn a little bit more about the candidates. We have a few here today that you can mingle with after the meeting and just get to know them. They're all great people. And so, but next week is when we're voting, last day to vote. So I'm going to call your name. Just stand up and we're going to acknowledge you and pray over you. So Joy Roybal is, he's running for El Paso County Sheriff. He's currently the undersheriff. Great guy. Get to meet Joe. Lindsay Moore. Lindsay's running for El Paso County Commissioner, I think District 1. Great lady. So get to know her. Stay standing, Lindsay. Let's see. Linda Zamora Wilson. Linda's running for District 9 for State Senate. Great lady. So get to know her. Retired Lieutenant Colonel from the Air Force. And then Heidi Ganal, stand up. Heidi, if you don't know her, is a fire plug. She's like a pit bull on crack, you know. And so get to know these. So you guys just extend your hands to these four people, and anyone else that's running for an office that we missed, stand up also, and we'll pray for you. So Lord, bless these people. Lord, it takes a special person to step out and to have the courage and the intestinal fortitude to reach out and to run for office. I say they're full of grit. And grit is defined as the ability to do hard things over a sustained period of time. And each of these four people is full of grit. And Father, you said as Jesus grew, he grew in favor before God and men. I pray for favor over all these four. And Father, we ask that you bless them. And Lord, as they're reaching out to serve the needs of all their constituents, would you reach down and meet their needs and their family, Lord, and bless them, that they lack in no area of their lives. In Jesus' name, amen. So, live free, live free, live free. So, Steve.
How are you guys doing this morning? We are doing something a little bit different here today, but before I get to that, I want to bless Ricky Bobby. Where's Ricky Bobby at? There he is. First one here, last one to leave. Every Tuesday morning, cooks this meal, smokes the meats, 4 or 5 meats every week. We just had Mario Murillo. We had 600 or 700 at Mario Murillo, and Ricky did that too. And so, Ricky, I've got a pretty cool gift for you. So this is for you, brother. So let's bless this guy. Love you, man. I appreciate you. Enjoy. Okay, this morning we're doing something a little different in that, when I'm here, I was in California. By the way, I was in California last week, and they've been open for 6 weeks. Whoa. So I every chance I had to talk to people, I talked about Colorado Springs, how much I love El Paso County. We've been open for almost 2 years, and that our COVID rates are less than theirs. And I had the privilege of being in one restaurant with this beautiful Hispanic lady, probably in her late 20s, early 30s, who defied the governor and opened up in spite of what he told her to do. And so I got to meet her and sit down with her and just tell her how proud I was of her, and whether anybody said anything to her in that community or not, that we appreciated the fact that she was willing to be a patriot and stand up against the the mandates coming out of Sacramento. And so she really appreciated that. But I'll tell you, man, when I come back to Colorado, whenever I fly back in, whenever I drive back into El Paso County, it feels free. It always feels free. So here's the deal. This is why it's a little different this morning. I'm not going to teach per se. I've got some other guys that are going to share. But we're starting a thing called the Joseph Enterprise. It's called the Joseph Enterprise based on the biblical Joseph, because we believe food shortages are coming. Let me give you a few stats here. All the experts in all the major industries in food, agriculture, and business are predicting food shortages. This may include some foods disappearing and others just becoming so expensive you can't afford to get them. The foods that they're predicting that will become scarce over the next few months are canned goods, turkey, beef, bacon, chicken, pet food, and even water bottles. Farmers are getting crushed by record diesel prices. The UN is warning of a crippling global food shortage. So at the road, we're anticipating that. And we're developing I don't even want to call it a food pantry. I'd rather call it a storehouse. We're going to start preparing a storehouse here at the facility with tens of thousands of dollars worth of food to be prepared for road people initially, but then others as if the food shortage continues. Here's the deal. It's a win-win for us to be prepared. So turn in your Bible to Genesis 41, and I just want to quickly take you through what I see Joseph doing during the great food famine that happened in Egypt. We'll just look at a couple things. I'm just going to take 3 minutes to do this, and then I'm asking two of our leaders to come up who've been preparing, and we're going to begin to mobilize with you men, and even you guys that are from other churches, which is a lot of you are from other churches, some Protestant, some Catholic. We want you to know nothing that we're sharing here is in any way proprietary. We want it to be open to all churches or anybody who wants it to develop and be ready for anything that comes our way. Let me give you a definition of enterprise. I'm calling it the Joseph Enterprise. Enterprise defined as a project or undertaking that is difficult, complicated, risky, and requires a willingness to engage in daring and difficult action. That's what we're doing. And you'll understand an hour from now what we're talking about. But look at Genesis 41, and you know, how many of you, everybody raise your hand if you know about Joseph. Okay, everybody knows about Joseph. Okay, Joseph, as you know, was sold into Egypt by his brothers. He works his way up through a set of tremendous, God-ordained situations in which God opens doors for him, and I won't go into it here, but it starts around chapter 39, moves up, but by chapter 41, he is actually now interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh. Okay, so that'd be like the President of the United States. Somehow this prisoner one day is now in the company of the President of the United States, the President of the Pharaoh, probably the most significant and most powerful nation in the world at that time. And so he begins to prophesy to him. That's the first part of chapter 41 about what his dreams meant. And basically what he said is this: there's going to be 7 years of plenty, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. So let us prepare. He says, pick a man to prepare during the 7 years of plenty to build a storehouse, or storehouses plural, for the famine that was coming. So look at, and I'll just go through these really quick. Verse 31. So 29. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very, very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. First thing, jot this down. First thing I want you to get this morning: God always warns his people when catastrophe is coming. God always warns his people. And most of the time, other people don't believe it. They think you're a nut. But God warns us, he prophetically says stuff to us, and we as God's people have a responsibility for that information. Here's the deal. You may not want that responsibility. You didn't seek that responsibility. You'd like to just stay comfortable the way it's always been, but I'm challenging you here as a wholehearted man, and you men as wholehearted men, you got to be wholehearted in all areas. Okay, so we're just asking you to begin to think that way. So this is Joseph talking to Pharaoh. That's the first thing. A warning. Here's what he gave. He gave a warning and he gave a diagnosis. A warning and a diagnosis. And the dream was repeated twice because the thing was established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Verse 33. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let them appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in 7 plentiful years. Number 2, wise leaders get selected during difficult times. Wise leaders get selected in difficult times if the constituency is wise. Okay? We got an election coming up. We've got some wise men and women right here to be selected. Now, whether or not the American citizenship and citizenry understands that, we don't know. We do know that we've got a president who can't ride a bicycle, but other than that, the reality is that we have a responsibility in the church and among believers to select good leaders. And I'm going to introduce you to 2 great leaders in just a moment. Verse 35, let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them help store food in the cities. And that food shall be as a reserve for the land. It's really important. They're not going to eat the food now. They're not going to use the food. They're going to make a reservation of the food in storehouses for 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during that famine. So number 3, they worked a plan. So we're going to give you a plan today, an enterprise, and we're going to start working that plan. Now jump to verse 53. Then the 7 years of plenty, which were in the land of Egypt, ended. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said, and the famine was in all the land, in all lands, plural, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. So number 4, there actually can be wealth in a famine. I mean, actually the church can be the wealthiest place during a difficult time if we prepare ahead and heed God's warning. Okay, and then 5thly and lastly, the famine was over all the face of the earth, verse 56, and Joseph opened up the storehouses, and he sold to the Egyptians, and the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. So all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe in all the lands. 5thly, it's a witness to the world. We can be a witness to the world that we were prepared, that we are ready, and we can help sustain them. So you're going to hear a strategy that we have. This is the first. We felt like that Wholehearted Men was the best place to initially share this. We haven't even brought this to our church. I haven't even brought this to my staff team. But we wanted you guys to know. So I wanted to set that up for Glenn Holloway and Mark McWilliams, who are leading this effort. And this is a synergy of radical resiliency with Glenn and Pam. Remember in COVID when we did our protocol? You know, we had 2,000 people got healed of COVID for $40, okay? Without shots or anything. We came against the situation that was there, and Pam and Glenn were used mightily, and over 8,000 people have been healed of COVID around the country, and 2,000 in El Paso County. Literally nobody died who took the protocol within the first or second day. Isn't that exciting? So there's a track record here. We know what we're doing. So Mark and Glenn, would you guys come up? And I believe everybody has something on their table that you guys can look at, and they're going to do a presentation. If you can squeeze through there, bro. All right, let's welcome Mark McWilliams and Glenn Holloway. Excuse me, brother.
Are we on? Now you're awake. Hey, thank you, Steve. We appreciate it very much, and this is something that both Glenn and I have been separately working on, talking about, engaging for well over 10 years, and getting prepared for what we saw was coming. In fact, 4 years ago, our church, our family was looking for a church, and we started talking and going back and forth, and somebody recommended this, and we showed up, and we sat right over here. And I remember hearing a sermon from Steve, and I looked over at my wife, and I said, finally, we've got a pastor that's getting ready to fight, getting ready to go here. Somebody that's got vision, somebody that's got passion to prepare for where I knew things were going to go. In fact, right shortly around that time, Trump had just gotten elected, and I turned to her again, and I said, oh, honey, the pendulum is going to swing so far in 4 years. Are we seeing it yet? Yeah. So I'm really thankful that Steve asked us and put the two of us together to start preparing this church, this congregation. I know we've got 100 churches in here, but getting us prepared for where things are already going. And so we'd like to share with what we've been working on, but our entire purpose this morning is recruiting. We're starting here. We're starting here with you men to say who has a passion to move forward in preparing for what's coming and wants to help us in this Joseph enterprise, because we've got to have more than the two of us, and we've got to have a bunch of skills, passions, knowledge, experience, training that's in this room today. So, let's start off.
Yeah, we get this thing to move, right? Does it work? I don't know.
Next slide.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what we know. If you've been paying attention to the news, you know, there hasn't been a whole lot of good news for the last couple of years with COVID coming around and everybody talking about a pandemic, and was it really something that just happened? And the truth of the matter of that is no. I'll give you some of my background very briefly. I was the critical infrastructure chief for the Department of Defense for a couple of years. And then after that, I was the advisor to DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which we did weapons of mass destruction. We were the organization that put those biolabs into Ukraine and went through that whole process. This has been planned out since all the way back to 2003 and beyond that. So what we're seeing is something that has been used numerous times, and we're talking about the fact that the powers that be, over the centuries that preceded where we're at now, have used these elements, energy, food, and water, as weapons to control the masses. The pandemic was used to get fear going and control the masses. Now we're shifting. We're shifting into a whole new period where food is becoming scarce, water is going to be restricted and controlled, and the gas that we have, the petrol that we have right now, as we see up here, what we know under diesel and things is the fact, you know, the President of the United States dipped into the oil reserve because he refused to let any more exploration wells be drilled. He refused to do the Keystone Pipeline. He refused to cut new deals with other nations that had oil, and he dipped into our reserves. This last week, he dipped into the diesel reserves on the East Coast and said, we're going to use those to fuel the truckers. These are our diesel reserves. They're only going to last 13 days, and then the trucks are going to stop rolling. That's just what's happening. We already know that. That's what's in the wind. And the price of fuel, all kinds of fuel, propane, diesel, regular gas, is going to go up by probably at least another $2 by the end of August. Truckers will not be able to make a living, and the trucks will slowly stop rolling. How does that impact us here? It impacts us here because this is not a high production area for food. We truck our food in from 1,500 miles to get it here to feed this population. If the trucks stop rolling, last week, as an example, I have been running food and brokering food for the congregation. On Monday, I was supposed to deliver 6 beef to people who had ordered beef. Well, guess what? Y'all saw what happened in Kansas? The cows died. And those cows that didn't die couldn't be trucked. There was no truckers available to truck them. And I had nothing to deliver, and the flow stopped coming to Colorado Springs. It's going to come better. It's going to get better this next week, but that's the effect of what goes on if your trucks stop rolling. The food stops. It happened once in Boston. In 3 days, all the food on the stocks and in the stores was gone because people rushed. If you remember COVID, remember the rush on toilet paper? And that's a real concern. Rush on toilet paper. What happens when we run out of food and water? You think it's going to get ugly? It will. So we need to prepare. We all need to be Josephs. And this Joseph Enterprise is going to take care of that. Food. Okay, we're now in the third or fourth year of drought in the American breadbasket. The jet stream has shifted east and south. We're seeing record heat waves this year, and it's only June. We're going to be experiencing drought throughout the middle of the United States, where the food comes from. And spin-off of that is we're watching flooding in the northwest, and we're seeing hail in the northeast. The crops have been taken out by hail. They're dying from lack of water and drought in the middle. And in the northwest, things are flooding. So it's the whole climate is affecting our food flow. And so food is just going to get scarce. It's just a fact. It's not something that's a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. And lastly, water. If you don't have water, you have something in about 3 to 4 days that we call death. And you really don't recover from it. It's one of those things that can ruin your day real quick. So if we don't have water, things are going to get ugly fast. And the way to do that is to prepare. And this is all about preparation. We are all Josephs. Look around at people sitting around you. You are here today because God prepared you to be here, or you wouldn't be here. Nothing is by chance. We are all here under God's plan, and we're going to take action, and we're here to make sure that this church takes the right action and we have a plan. Which way? That way. That way? That way? Try it.
We're going to do the next slide each time.
Yeah.
Is that the thing each time?
That's
Hey,
it.
there we go.
Yeah,
All
there
right.
you go.
Okay, so the important thing, our government is so here to help, aren't they? You know, I loved it when Reagan said that years ago. We're the government, we're here to help, and he said it tongue-in-cheek, and we're saying it this morning tongue-in-cheek. Whether they are just currently inept or whether they're doing this intentionally, I'm not going to sit and point fingers, and I'm not going to get into that this morning. The point is, it's here, it's happening, and it's not seeming to get better, whether he's fallen off a bicycle or what. It doesn't matter. They are not making the decisions necessary. Now, some of us in the room are avid readers and study and research and get into politics and get into all the different styles. I'm just here to tell you right now, it's not going to get better under the current administration. They don't have the tools, they don't have the concepts to do what's possible. And whether we're going to start talking about socialism and all that, I'll never forget, here was about 20 years ago, I'm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, of all places, right? And for those that have been there, Cedar Rapids was wise enough to determine that it's freaking cold in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in the winter. And so they had tunnels underground to go from building to building, and they had little, above ground, totally enclosed, heated, so you could go to all the different buildings in the town, in downtown. It was wonderful. But I came into one of them, and there's this camera and these teenagers standing there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And they said, sir, can we ask you a question? I said, absolutely, bring it. What do you think of communism? I said, is this part of your school project? What are you doing? Where are you going? They're like, oh, yeah. They want us to find out about communism, of why it's a good thing. I turned to my buddy and I said, oh, did they ask the wrong guy? It's like the Jehovah's Witness knocking on my door. Oh, my Lord. I spent the next 20 minutes explaining to them how it's a failed economic system and it does not progress, and the way it tears it down, and they're just eyes wide open, mouth drops, and they got a really good video clip that day. The point is, we're watching this, we've been studying this, we can see that the way they're moving forward and leading our country is not going to take us where we need to go. In fact, it's going to keep taking us where we've been talking here. So I only point that out to say, if there are those in the room who are looking for someone to step in and make it right, we're a ways away. Also, didn't we just talk about people getting elected? We did. And how you vote, and be bold in how you tell others and encouraging them. We're done being silent and quiet and passive. All right? Keep going. Next slide.
You heard Pastor Steve this morning talk about Joseph. Well, we're looking for Josephs. We want you all to turn into Joseph. We want you all to see the vision. We want you all to start getting prepared. And as soon as you get your own families prepared, then you look to your neighbor and you create a community. We have got to pull together as a community. We talk about the difference, the fact that we've got churches in here, numerous churches represented with you men that are here today, and that this is going to be a shining beacon on the hill as part of the plan to create a kingdom revolution in the Rockies. But it goes beyond that. Pastor Steve talked about the fact that my wife and I worked on COVID during the COVID years in the last 2 years. Now we've shifted gears. 23rd of July, we are speaking in Washington, D.C. to the Well-Versed Futures Conference led by Michelle Bachmann. And the point of that is to, how do we save this country? How do we get communities to work as communities? And how do we use Colorado Springs as a template for other communities to follow as that shining beacon on the hill that shows how to do it right, so others can use it as a template to move their cities forward. And we believe we can do that because we have the people in this room who are anxious to join forces and to be that community. We cannot function alone. No man is an island.
Just in our conversation here today, and please know that we're going to go way beyond this, but what we're starting with is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many remember their Psychology 101? Oh, Lord, right? However, we got to studying Maslow's hierarchy of needs at that time, and we found that, yes, it's true. It works. But more importantly, what we want to focus on here with this group and everything we're going to do here for the next couple of years is those bottom two. Physiological needs and safety needs, those are what's important. Next slide. There we go. So physiological needs. Go ahead. You were going to talk about water and food.
Water. We kind of brushed that already. We talked about the administrations. Steve was just in California. California has passed restrictions that says you can't water your yard. You can't do anything that's not essential, according to the government at that point, which means in some places they're even restricting cities from pulling water from the rivers so they can replenish their water stores that feed everybody and give water to everybody actually in the towns. We see that coming. It's only June. Like I said, there's a heat wave. We're going to experience more drought. Water is going to be controlled. If anybody here had a new well drilled lately? Did they put a meter on it? All the new wells get meters on them. They're metering your water. They be in the county. You can't use more than an amount of water. They say if you've got 40 acres, I own 40 acres. They came out and told me that I could use water to water a quarter of an acre. And they said, and by the way, you're an agricultural area. How can you be an agricultural area if you can only water a quarter of an acre out of 40 acres? It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So water's going to become an issue, and it's going to become scarce. The other thing is food. We've talked about food a little bit. Back in 1930, there was this country called Russia. Russia decided it really wanted another country called the Ukraine because the Ukraine was the breadbasket of Europe. Kind of sounds like today, doesn't it? So they decided, you know what, if we take over all the control of the food production in the Ukraine, we won't have to fire a shot. And they didn't. They killed over 18 million people. They waltzed on in and took over the Ukraine without firing a bullet. And the people just gave up. You can't fight if you don't have food and you don't have water. So that was the situation. And they're using food now as a weapon, and we see that in the news almost on a daily basis. And we have major oligarchs buying up the food production land. The gates of hell will not prevail, but Gates is buying up all the land. You've got people that are buying up our productive land. And guess what? The production of chemical food has gone up 60% just this summer. So they're trying to totally move us away from productive food and take control of the food source themselves. So we're going to see problems there. We know that.
So,
and lastly, you can talk shelter.
Shelter. So we live in Colorado. Right now it's stunning. This is why we live here. However, there are times of the year here where you may make it 3 days without water, but you're not going to make it 3 hours without shelter. And so one of the things we're going to be preparing and talking about is how can we have shelter? How can we have organizations so that those who don't have it can get into shelter? How can we manage and take care of and oversee those of us here that we love and are extended to keep them safe? Shelter from the weathers, from all that comes as well, and then we'll talk personal security with that. How do we protect our shelter? How do we protect our food and water? How do we manage and maintain and protect what we have and make sure that others aren't coming to take it? Because when that time comes, and not if, we've already seen it happen in major cities in America. You guys realize that, right? We did the whole COVID thing, but we've had inflation during 4 cities in America on fire in the last 2 years. Now, I'm not quite old enough to remember the 60s. I know, that's why we laugh at him. All right, yes, we had that before. We got through that. This time, it seems to be much more rampant, and we want to be prepared. We want to be prepared for what is coming, because you take away food and water, people become animals, and we need to be prepared for that.
We're going to go forward here, and we go in the future. We've already talked about health. We're setting up our own health system, which we know needs. We've seen total failure of the health system. Without your health, you can't do these other things. So you've got to stay healthy. My wife is talking up in Loveland just this Sunday on how to use ozone, and we've got doctors that are signed up that want to minister to people physically all up and down the Front Range, and action will once again be centered here in Colorado Springs, and will be centered in the road as the people that are making that happen. So it's moving forward, and we're looking after you, but the big call is you've got to look after yourself. Everybody's got to participate. You can't sit back and say, somebody's going to look after me like they do in some of your big cities. It doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. We need you to join forces and to be a community that'll go forward.
So what we're looking for you men to tell us, and we're going to give you a survey here in a few minutes to tell us, we're looking for folks who want to join in, who want to be a part of this, who have skills. All right, let's just ask real quick. How many in this room are current or ex-military? Sure. Oh yeah. Love it. We've had particular training. Some of us have forgotten, some of us want to forget. But more importantly, we've had it. But there are others in this room. How many guys do we have in here who are in the construction business? Quite a few. Excellent. How many do we have in, this will throw you. How many do we have in here that have computer science, computer engineering? Excellent. Because part of that security we talked about earlier is going to be related to how we communicate and how we communicate across the internet. We need to be prepared for that. Speaking of communication, how many do we have in communication background? Radio, ham radio, oh, there we go. Media. We're going to try to pull these skills and talents that you guys already have, pull them together. For those of you that have a passion, and none of those skills, raise your hand. All right. We're going to need you too, because we've got to have that passion. We've got to have that energy. And then we've got people who have the absolute know-how to build an organization that's going to take us safely, protected, well-fed, strong health through what's coming.
This is the first in a series. We're talking about the 7 mountains, if you wanted to relate it to something. We want to take and look at the 7 mountains of influence. Only they're going to be our 7 mountains of the Joseph enterprises that we're going to go to. We've got Haim that's been working the voter's guide. We've got voting coming up. Very important. Get out and vote, because we got to have the right people with the right mindset, guided by godly values, to take over the government and work through that. Through the process. Work within the process. The best way you can do change is working some of the process. So we're going to go forward here in the next briefing, and we'll get into the subjects that you see there. It's going to be followed up with training. It's no good just to say, hey, we're going to do this, be part of something, and then not be trained in it. So we're going to find out who has certain skills. As you've raised your hands here, we know we have people that have skills. We'll take those people, try to group them together, and then come back with training for the whole congregation as we move forward. Like I said, as a template that we can export to other churches and other communities. We cannot do this alone. Even if Colorado Springs is successful in what it does, and all of our food comes from Kansas, is that going to work? We've got to have Kansas survive. We've got to have places that have the water flowing survive. We have to all work together once again as a godly nation and go forward. This is one nation under God. It was how it was created. And you know, God said, if my people will humble themselves, I will heal their nation. And we need to do that. And we've already seen numerous years where we haven't had a humbled government or world. The World Economic Forum just stopped. And they said they are going to control everything and we're going to be happy. I don't think so. I know I'm not going to be happy.
Good luck with that.
Right. So we're going to go forward with more briefings and more training to follow. But today we're just wanting to get started with these 3 and identify what we have and how we can get everybody together as a unified front to get moving forward to establish this kingdom of God revolution here in the Rockies.
So with your tables, this is time to sit down, talk amongst yourselves, who has different skill sets, who has training, who has knowledge, who has passion. And if you'll hit that QR code we've put on each one of them, it's 2 quick surveys. They're 2 quick surveys where we're going to be able to compile the information and find those who really care about moving forward with this. Maybe you're just saying, hey, look, I don't have any of it, but I sure want to learn. I want to know how to take care of my family. I want to know how to make sure that we have water, food, shelter. I think I know, but I'd really like some more information. Say it. Put it in there. You're the guys also that we want to serve and talk to, because it is essential. These are things that he and I have been working on for many, many years, and everybody comes down in the basement and looks at me and goes, dude, wow, that's a lot. Yes, it is. That's all right. And whether it's in preparation for defense, we're going to talk about that. Please note in the last slide we said defense, not offense. We're not here to try to put together a militia right now. We are here to put together those of us who want to protect our families, protect our loved ones, and make sure they're well fed, cared for, have shelter, have water. And there are ways to prepare for this that are not expensive, but it's going to take forethought. And thank you so much for naming this the Joseph Enterprises, because Joseph had the wisdom to see what was coming and prepare for it by being wise over the time. They took 7 years to prepare for that. That means 7 years of rationing so that we'd have 7 years of plenty later. That's wisdom. And so that's what we're looking to do right now. You want to talk real quick about the surveys, and then we're going to let you guys hit.
Use the code, go on the surveys. It'll take you to the resilience.health site. I need more water. And then just follow. There's a password there so you can sign in, because we just don't want anybody using it at this point. Sign in, fill out the survey. Peter Schmidt down here at table 13 is our web guy, and we're using his skills and talents. We kept him up till 10 o'clock last night putting this thing together, and he's like, what do you mean I have to answer my phone and talk to you people one more time? I says, I don't like that question. We need to fix it. And the reason what we've done is you go to the survey, It'll identify your skills, where you're wanting to get involved, and it may not be the area you're educated in. A lot of you are probably like me. I mean, I was military, and in about 2010, when I realized what was going on with our country, I said, I want to be a farmer, and I left. And I left D.C., and I went to Idaho, and ran 1,200 acres up there because I saw this coming and tried to be very self-sufficient, but God said, I have a different plan for you. And he brought me back here in 2019 to Colorado Springs, and I had no choice whatsoever. Took my farm, burnt my house down the same day, and then broadsided my car and totaled it out all in one day. And when I walked away, I had one bag of clothes, my whole family did, and we said, I guess we're in Colorado Springs, and God wants us here, and we're starting over. And we found this church and said, that's where we're supposed to be. So go in, fill out the surveys. They're very easy. They're yes or no. They've got a drop-down window. Put you, go there.
What's the password?
I'm not going to say that because it's been recorded, isn't it? Go to the site. It'll be there. It's there on the site. It'll give it to you. Okay.
Yep. And
Well, it's right there on the screen.
It is
Yeah.
right up there.
There it is. Yeah, whole heart.
And it is on the sheet of paper right there on your
Yep.
on your table. Hit the QR code, do both of those
Yep.
surveys. That'll give us the information, and then we're going to be in touch with everybody to reach out and take next steps. Does that sound good, gentlemen?
And
All right.
And that slogan on there, can you live free if you don't have food and water or a community to be with, all rooted in the faith of God? Do you believe you can live free? No. But can we here at this church live free? Yes. Why? Because we are wholehearted.
Come on, better than that. Whole heart. Whole heart. Whole heart. Thank you, gentlemen.
If you have any questions, I'm at table 13, and I'm always on, since COVID hit, I'm always answering my email and the phone, so all hours of the night and day.
Great job.
Let's give these guys a round of applause. Thank you guys for that. Hey, all the first timers, if you want to stand up, you're going to follow me into the library. We tell you what we do, why we do it, and how we got to where we are today. If you want to keep coming on a regular basis and be assigned a table, this is how you do it. There's some first timers that are sitting at tables that didn't have room at the first timer table. Follow me into the library. And the candidates will be in the lobby if you guys want to talk to them. Get to know them. They are all great people. Thank you.